Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of our Wednesday night Bible study over the book of Revelation. Thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all who have been watching. Thank you for the comments and the encouragement I've gotten. It really means a lot and helps to know that you're out there and watching. We'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we're going to cover chapter 17. Last week we did chapter 16 with the seven bowls of wrath, with its culmination being the judgment, with a view of Judgment Day, just as all the other visions. So, and if you remember back to the vision of the persecuting dragon, we were introduced to four enemies of the mother of the man-child, which we said the mother, of course, is God's church. And those enemies were the dragon, Satan, the sea beast, which we said was anti-Christian government, the land beast, which was anti-Christian religion, and the fourth was those that had the mark of the beast. And we said that those were the ones, people who worshipped the beast, and we were introduced to them in that specific order. Revelation 16 through 20, we will see the destruction of those enemies of Christ's church in reverse order. Last week, the bowls dealt primarily judgment on those who had the mark of the beast. Chapter 17 and 18 will deal with the destruction of the sea beast, which here it's Babylon the harlot. 19 will detail the destruction of the land beast, and chapter 20 will get the final destruction of Satan, the dragon himself. So before we get started, I want to mention up front that the interpretation that Babylon the harlot is the sea beast, is false religion, isn't as popular, I would say, in modern times, put it that way, maybe the last century or so, with commentators, but historically that is the interpretation of these next two chapters. It is the historically accepted interpretation that Babylon the harlot refers to false apostate Christianity. And by apostate, that just means falling away. The harlot, in all its manifestations, is false religion, chiefly the Roman Catholic Church of the early to Middle Age period of time. Most of those who don't see the beast as false religion see it as the literal city of Rome. Babylon the harlot. They see it as the literal city of Rome, and that's a view that at least is partially correct in my eyes, but I think there's more to it than that, and we'll get to that in a second. Hendrickson did not himself. I told you that he was one of my two go-tos. He doesn't see the Roman Catholic Church or the sea beast in Babylon the harlot. He sees, and quote him here, He sees Babylon the harlot as the concentration of the luxury, vice, and glamour of this world. It's the world viewed as the embodiment of the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the vainglory of life. Basically, he sees it as the personification of temptation, if I can put words in his mouth. But as a woman, as a city, basically. I want to lay out a few reasons why I believe that Babylon the harlot is the sea beast, is apostate Christianity, before we get into reading it. The first is the use of adultery and harlotry is the standard description of apostasy in the Old Testament. Leviticus 17:7, Numbers 15:39, Judges 2:17, Judges 8:27, Judges 8:33, Judges 19:2, 1 Chronicles 5:25, 2 Chronicles 21:13, Psalms 106:39, Jeremiah 3 verses 1, 6, and 8, and Ezekiel 9 all refer to Israel or Judah as playing the harlot when they left God to go worship other idols. The idols of the Gentiles. And I ran off several there. There's at least 13 more verses on a quick Google search than those where the same thing is the case. So my opinion of that right there should be reason enough or proof enough. But there's more. You know, as we will read, John sees the harlot in the wilderness. Who else was in the wilderness? The radiant woman of chapter 12, right? The one who gave birth to the man-child. She went there to escape the dragon, correct? And when we talked about that chapter, that the wilderness is representative of Christian sojourn on earth. You know, like the Israelites, 40 years in the wilderness, wandered 40 years in the wilderness, was a foreshadowing of the Christian journey on earth. That leads us to the conclusion that Babylon the harlot in the wilderness is the church gone astray. Also, as we'll read when we read the text, John is astonished by, he wonders at the image of the harlot riding the beast. If this was Rome, it's hard to imagine that he would be astonished by seeing a pagan city sitting atop one of Satan's helpers in the beast. But seeing the church gone astray in such a manner is more believable that he would be amazed by that. In Revelation 21, the bride of Christ, the church, is referred to as city, New Jerusalem. Of course, we have Babylon opposed to New Jerusalem. Also, Rome is one of the 7 heads of the land beast, so which the harlot rides upon. Therefore, the harlot, it can't be imperial Rome, at least. There are many other reasons, but the ones I've mentioned here, in my opinion, are more than enough to prove that Babylon the harlot symbolizes apostate Christianity. But that leads me to a question that I had to ask myself when I was studying this. So, the people with the mark of the beast, that symbol didn't change. The land beast is the same. The dragon is the same. So why change the symbol from the sea beast to Babylon the harlot? It's my humble opinion that the sea beast represented not only Christianity going astray or false prophets, but all anti-Christian religion. The emperor worship of Rome, other pagan worship, all the gods of the pagans worship. Islam. Any anti-Christian religion was symbolized in the sea beast. But it's my opinion that Babylon the harlot specifically symbolizes apostate Christianity. All right, so chapter 17, like I said, 17 and 18 will detail the destruction of this harlot. 17 is kind of an introduction, or it gives us a history of the harlot, more or less. And 18 will tell us more about her destruction and her final judgment. All right, let's read chapter 17. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying, Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me, Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, one is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. Then he said to me, The waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. All right, so let's get on with it. I was going to try to combine 17 and 18 like I did last week, but there was just too much, and it would be much too long for me to talk at one time. So we'll just do one chapter a night. All right, so verse 1, by having one of the angels that had one of the 7 bowls be the one coming to talk to John to show him this judgment of the harlot, we can conclude that the vision of these chapter 17 and 18 is kind of a playback of the same scene from chapter 16, but with Babylon the Great, who was mentioned in verse 19 of chapter 16, being the focal point. So it says, verse 2, the kings of the earth committed fornication. This speaks to the corruption of the state and false religion. And they that dwell on the earth, where the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication. This is the harlot basically leading mankind astray, away from God. So in verse 3, as I mentioned earlier, the wilderness was where the radiant woman, chapter 12, escaped to after she gave birth to the man-child Christ, supporting the view that the harlot is the apostate church. And the scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, that's the sea beast from chapter 13, which we said was anti-Christian government. And, the 7 heads represented 7 successive empires that persecuted Christ's church. So here the harlot rides upon the beast. The beast supports her. She could possibly be in control of the beast. So verse 4, contrast what the harlot wears to the radiant woman of chapter 12. The radiant woman was clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, right? Just heavenly glory. Here, the harlot, she's arrayed in purple and scarlet, and she's decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls. These are symbols of worldly wealth. It may be wrong of me to think this way, but I can't help but think of, you see a lot of the preachers of the so-called prosperity gospel and how many of them live like kings. As one man told me, he said, if you're a preacher of the gospel and you live in a multi-million-dollar mansion, there better not be a single homeless person in the city you preach in. And speaking of worldly wealth, how she was adorned. You can Google the estimated net worth of several churches online. The Roman Catholic Church is estimated to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars itself. Why does a church need that much wealth? How did it get it in the first place? But I don't want to keep dogging the Roman Catholic Church. They're not the only ones. Okay, also she has a golden cup full of abominations, including her fornications. She's enticing. This kind of reminds me of the Grail scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the bad guy goes in there at the end and he has to choose which is the Holy Grail from all these ornate chalices and what have you, cups. And of course, he chooses poorly, right? He chooses the most ornate one there was, and he said, "This is the cup of a king." And of course, he was wrong. But like that kind of thinking, the harlot's cup is golden, but it doesn't contain the blood of Christ like we symbolically take every Sunday. No, this is full of her abominations and her wickedness. it says on her forename, her name was written. Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of the harlots and the abominations of the earth. The mystery is, as Plummer put it, the worldly portion of the church, though nominally Christian, is in reality identical with the world and is openly antagonistic to God. That's the mystery, excuse me. Then John sees the woman. She's drunk with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When we talked about the sea beast in the history of the Roman Catholic Church, we mentioned the Spanish Inquisition and how just terrible that was. But like I said, the Catholic Church isn't alone. Protestantism also has plenty of blood on its hands historically. And again, I want to stress, when we speak of the harlot or the sea beast being apostate Christianity, that's what those symbols represent. We are not talking about the everyday Catholics that are trying their best to live and follow the teachings of Christ. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the papal hierarchy that throughout its history has used its influence to gain power and wealth. Exactly the opposite of what the true church should do. It says, John wondered at the sight of the woman. Some versions have wondered with great admiration. Once again, if Rome was in view here, would that be so significant to cause John to wonder? He was quite familiar with the power and hostility that the Roman Church had toward Christianity. No, his wonder must be attributed to seeing a portion that was once the Church of God being symbolized by a prostitute in concert with the land beast. The land beast, it said it had his blasphemy, was sitting on a scarlet beast which was full of names of blasphemy. So here you have what is supposedly, Christianity working in concert with this beast that has names full of blasphemy, anti-Christian government and processes. Alright, so verse 7. The angel asked John, why did you marvel? I'll tell you what the mystery of the woman and the beast is. But it's almost like, why did you marvel? You should know what you're looking at, what these symbols are. And since he was obviously well versed in the Old Testament, the use of harlotry as the image of apostasy, it's very possible that John understood the vision, but he could have been shocked by the sheer magnitude of it, the depth of the apostasy of the church. But should he, right? Israel fell away from God over and over and over and became so corrupt that they crucified their own Messiah. Should it be shocking that some from the Lord's church will become allies of Satan? And I think it was John, and I can't remember which book, I'm sorry, but he wrote that the mystery of iniquity was already at work. So even in New Testament times, they were heading toward this apostasy, slowly but surely. So the next few verses can get pretty hairy, really 8 through 12 or so. But we're gonna slug through them and do the best we can. So verse 8 says, "The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come out of the abyss." Okay, so remember from chapter 13 when they described the sea beast and the land beast. The sea beast, which was once again anti-Christian government, had 7 heads, and one of its heads, it said, had a mortal wound but healed. This, to me, is what he's talking about with the beast that was and is not. This is before the time that mortal wound had healed on the head. And it's going to come up and go to perdition. You know, the ultimate destiny of this beast is hell. Those that dwell on the earth, that's those whose name isn't written in the book of life, both refer to non-believers, the impenitent. And shall come refers to the head healing. I think some versions, I don't think the New King James has shall come. It just says will ascend out of the bottomless pit. So that's the head that will grow back from the mortal wound. And I don't know if we covered that in the past or not. I hope I did. I can't remember. But you know, Rome was one of the 7 heads. It's actually the 6th of the 7 heads. And the 7th was one to come. Well, in this interpretation is actually the Roman Catholic Church. I think we may have talked about it. You know, the Holy Roman Empire and the Catholic Church working through that, and then on and through the Middle Ages, that it actually became its own head. Remember, it says that the land beast made an image like unto the sea beast and made those worship the image. The image that it made was basically itself turning into its own form of government, more or less, for lack of a better word. So in verse 9 it says, "Here's a mind that has wisdom." You know, there's a deeper meaning than what's on the surface. It says the 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. Excuse me. Aha! That would have been better if I didn't have to drink some water between them. Rome sits on 7 hills. The harlot must symbolize Rome. Well, yes and no. That, you know, might be correct if the next verse didn't tell us more. Verse 10 tells that the heads are also 7 kings. So, as you know, the 7 heads were 7 successive empires that persecuted God's church, you know, starting with the Israelites and on through. It says 5 had fallen. Depending on who you read, the 5 are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, and Greece. Hendrickson has Old Babylon, Assyria, Babylon, New Babylon, Persia, and Greece. All right. The one that's Rome, of course. That's when this was written. And the one is yet to come and will remain a little while. So we talked about when Rome was overthrown in 467 AD. I think I have it somewhere later on in my notes. And then a little bit later on, the Holy Roman Empire was established, and that's the Catholic Church grew out of that and spread its influence all over the world. basically. That is the one that is yet to come. In that little while, it says, that is the gospel age. Verse 11. So the beast that was and is not is himself also the eighth. He's a part of the seven. You got that? Okay. So it seems that the entire beast himself is going to be, we'll read on, is another head himself, and will make the eighth anti-Christian government. It'll be the eighth incarnation of anti-Christian government, and seemingly he'll be the worst of all that we've seen yet in history. In verse 12, as we talked about when we discussed the sea beast, and I'll probably mix these up when I'm saying land, sea, land, sea. Sea is government, land, false prophet. Now, that's if I mix them up and say reverse, just forgive me. My mouth moves slower than my brain a lot of the times. So as we said when we talked about both the beasts, the sea beast had 10 horns, 10 heads, 7 heads and 10 horns. And we said, just as the angel is telling John, that the 10 horns or 10 kings are kingdoms. They're not worldwide powers like the 7 heads are. They're more like regional, powerful states. Not like states of America, but independent states throughout history. I think very likely that number 10 is symbolic. I think we've got some examples of those going on today. China, Russia, especially China right now, what they're doing over there. Verse 14, making war with the Lamb equates to persecuting the church. But he will overcome, and those that are faithful, we will overcome with Christ. And as I said before, that's the overarching theme, along with judgment, that is the book of Revelation. Verse 15, as in other visions, the waters symbolize the earth population. The domain of the harlot is the whole world. So in verse 16, it starts to get interesting again. Things don't work out well between the beast and the harlot. The beast and his dominions, the 10 kingdoms, will turn on the harlot. They'll hate her, strip her, rob her, eat her, and burn her completely. And that's quite a lovely picture. A couple things kind of can go into that. If you think that Christ and his message is so pure and so righteous that even a perverted version of it is still too much for the devil to take, and he'll eventually turn on it. Also, you have to think that you have a jealousy of the kingdoms and the power that the harlot has over the people. We kind of got a glimpse of this if you read anything about the French Revolution. There's a glimpse of this prophecy in that. You had the treasury of the Catholic Church in France was plundered. Many of the clergy were taken out and beheaded or cast out. So in verse 17, this tells us that God will harden those earthly kingdoms and put it in their heart to destroy the harlot. We talked last week about how God can harden people's hearts, basically lets them, leaves them to their own devices. Now, while we've seen partial fulfillments of this throughout history, even going on today, it seems that there may come a time when all the nations, or at least the leading nations, will work together to clear the earth of religion altogether, both pure and perverted religion. Verse 17 also says that these horns, these smaller kingdoms, they give their kingdoms to the beast. Many people see this as the Antichrist, but this is the eighth and final beast, when these kingdoms basically give their kingdom over to this beast. John, 1 John 4 tells us that this Antichrist has already come, or at least the spirit of the Antichrist has, and basically, in 1 John he tells us anybody who denies that Jesus is the Son of God is Antichrist. Now, they might not be the Antichrist, but this could be the lawless one from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and 18. That's where Paul is telling the church that the end times, the end of days, or judgment day, will not come until the falling away, the great apostasy, and the man of sin is revealed. And that, once that happens, then that's followed by the revealing of the lawless one, is what Paul calls him. And I don't know if that's a literal person or a group of people, but it's called the lawless one. And a lot of people, and maybe rightly so, say that that's the lawless one is the Antichrist. That's another discussion for another time. So in verse 18, it says, "The woman is the great city which reigns over the kings of the earth." So at the beginning of the study, I said, that the view that the harlot symbolized Rome, literal Rome, was at least partly right. Imperial Rome wasn't in view at all. Imperial Rome was one of the 7 heads on the beast. But Rome, the city Rome, was in view here, but let's see, not best way to put it, not as the literal city itself, but more because it is the headquarters, the worldwide headquarters of what became the apostate church. And remember, her name was Mystery Babylon, or Secret Babylon. So it only symbolizing the literal city, isn't accepted. There's more to it than that. It's Mystery Babylon. So that is chapter 18 in under 40 minutes. We're getting better. I really appreciate you listening, watching too. That's always good. Next week, Lord willing, we will cover Revelation chapter 18, which will detail the final judgment and destruction of Babylon the harlot. So once again, thanks. If you have any questions, comments, please, tell me where I'm wrong. I love, talking about this stuff and learning more. If there's something else that I can learn, I'm all for it. Not that I, know it all or anything, especially in this book. But I've rambled enough. We'll see you next week, and as always, God bless. Thank you.